you believe you're in control? Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you never miss the next deep dive into your mind. But what if I told you that your decisions have already been made before you even decide what to wear, what to say, even how you'll react to the next message you receive? All of it may already be written in the invisible circuits of your brain. Fractions of a second before your consciousness chooses, neurotransmitters have already fired. Synapses have already connected. But what if there was a way to access this code? To rewrite what seemed unchangeable? To transform not just what you think, but how you think? Today, you're not just going to understand how your mind works. You're going to step through the door into the place where decisions are born. And when that happens, nothing will be the same. Imagine you're standing in front of a massive control panel. Every lever, button, and light corresponds to a decision in your life. You believe you're in charge, a steady hand over the controls, choosing the next move. But what you can't see is that, behind you, there's an invisible operator. They move the levers before you even notice. They decide before you decide. Experiments by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet in the 1980s revealed something unsettling. The brain initiates the electrical activity for an action up to 0.35 seconds. Before you consciously feel you've chosen to do it, in other words, when you decide to raise your hand, your brain has already started the process, and only afterward lets you know. This doesn't mean we don't have free will, but that free will exists at a deeper level than we imagined. It's not in the moment you push the button, but in the patterns that configure the panel long before the act. Here's the first truth you need to swallow. Most of your life is driven by invisible processes. If you don't learn to influence those processes, you'll just be a passenger in your own mind. If this is already opening your mind, hit the like button right now. It tells me to bring more advanced mind-shifting content like this. The brain is the most complex structure known in the universe. With around 86 billion neurons and trillions of synaptic connections, can generate all the thoughts, emotions, memories, and decisions that make up who you believe you are. It was shaped to ensure survival. Every sensation, every quick judgment, every cognitive bias has an evolutionary reason. To keep you alive long enough to reproduce and protect your offspring. When you look in the mirror, what you see is an interface. This incredible machine is also economical. It prefers routines, shortcuts, and repeated patterns because creating new connections requires energy. That's where problems begin. The same efficiency that keeps you from having to relearn how to drive every day also locks in fears, harmful habits, and limiting narratives. Contemporary neuroscience, especially through the work of Karl Friston, shows us that the brain is a prediction machine. Its main goal is to reduce surprise, to minimize the difference between what it expects and what actually happens. When you walk into a room, you're not registering every detail from scratch. Your brain projects what it expects to find and only corrects small prediction errors. This makes life faster and more efficient, but it can also trap you. If you've internalized the belief that nobody likes me, your brain will unconsciously look for signs to confirm that prediction. A neutral expression will be interpreted as hostility. Silence will be seen as rejection. This process is called confirmation bias, and it's not just psychological, it's neurobiological. Your neural network reinforces repeated predictions, even if they no longer match reality. Consciousness, in this picture, is like a narrator arriving after the movie is already edited. You think you're seeing and deciding, when in fact you're just watching the final cut of something your brain scripted backstage. Dopamine is one of the most misunderstood neurotransmitters. Many believe it's the pleasure molecule. Wolfram Schultz's studies show that dopamine spikes not when we get the reward, but when we expect it. If the prediction fails, levels drop abruptly. That's why social media, dating apps, and games are so addictive. They operate on a variable reward mechanism, just like slot machines. The brain becomes enslaved to micro peaks of expectation. It's not the pleasure that hooks us, it's the hope for it. This invisible engineering explains why we can chase habits that harm us, not because the outcome is good, but because the promise of the outcome keeps the dopamine system on constant alert. The concept of neuroplasticity forever changed how we see the brain. We once thought it was like wet cement, moldable only in the first years of life, hardening afterward. Now we know it's more like clay, moldable until the end of life, though with more resistance as we age. Michael Merzenich experiments showed that even adult brains can create new connections after injury, reorganizing areas to take over lost functions. A violinist develops more refined sensory areas in the hand that manipulates the strings. A London taxi driver, constantly navigating complex routes, develops a larger hippocampus, the area linked to spatial memory. The lesson is clear. The brain adapts to what you repeat. Every recurring thought strengthens a neural pathway, like a rail track, making it easier for your attention to follow. If you cultivate anxiety daily, your brain becomes an expert at anticipating threats. If you consistently practice gratitude, areas linked to emotional regulation strengthen. But here's the detail most people miss. Neuroplasticity doesn't choose what's good or bad, it just records. You're the engineer who chooses which circuit gets reinforced. That choice doesn't happen with grand gestures, but with daily micro-decisions. Your memory isn't a locked vault. It's more like an open document you edit every time you recall it. When a traumatic event occurs, the brain records not only the story, but also the chemistry of the moment. Stress hormones, muscle tension, heart rate. And every time that memory is triggered, that chemistry repeats. That's why a simple trigger, a smell, a song, tone of voice, can throw you back into a feeling of danger, even if no danger is present. Studies on memory reconsolidation show it's possible to intervene in this process. By bringing a memory up and then exposing it to new information or emotions, it's as if you're updating the file. The event doesn't change, but the meaning does. Think of it as watching the same movie scene with a different soundtrack. The image is identical, but the emotional impact is completely different. When you change the music, you change the emotion. When you change the emotion, you change the way the brain stores and accesses that memory. This is the key to breaking mental loops of self-sabotage. It's not about erasing the past, but about reframing how it speaks to the present. The unconscious is like the background orchestra. You can't see it, but without it, there's no music. It's estimated that 95% of daily decisions are made outside of consciousness. That includes everything from the path you take when walking through your home to the tone of voice you use in a conversation. It operates based on learned patterns, many of them imprinted in childhood. If you grew up hearing that money is dangerous, you might sabotage financial opportunities without realizing it. If you learn that showing vulnerability is weakness, you might shut down emotionally, even in safe relationships. The problem is that the unconscious doesn't distinguish between useful and harmful. It just repeats what it learned. That SYU can change it with logic alone. The unconscious speaks the language of repetition and intense emotion. To reprogram it, you need to create new experiences charged with enough emotion to overwrite the old pattern. It's not about convincing, it's about conditioning. And this process isn't instant but cumulative. Each repetition is a new note in the music of your life. 1. Immersive visualization. Picture yourself living the change you want with maximum sensory detail. Colors, sounds, textures, smells. Your brain activates neural networks similar to real experiences, training itself to accept this reality as possible. 2. Progressive exposure to fear. Face what blocks you in micro steps. The brain learns safety gradually, and each small victory reduces the automatic fight-or-flight response. 3. Applied mindfulness. It's not about stopping thought, it's observing thought without immediately reacting. This creates a space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies your true power of choice. 4. Control of environmental triggers. Want to change a habit? Make access to the triggers you want to strengthen easier, and make access to those you want to eliminate harder. The environment shapes behavior as much as willpower. 5. Ultradian rhythm. Use your natural energy and focus cycles, about 90 minutes, to align demanding tasks with your peaks of cognitive performance. We've reached the end. But in truth, this is where it all begins. Now you know that most of your life happens before consciousness. You know your brain is moldable, that patterns can be rewritten, that memories can be reframed. But this is not passive knowledge, it's a call. As you hear these words, synapses are strengthening or weakening. What you think and do in the next few minutes will determine which paths will be easier to access tomorrow. Control isn't just in the moment of decision, it's in the soil where decisions are born, and that soil is cultivated every day. So the question I leave you with is, what mental landscape do you want to walk through in the coming years? And what are you willing to plant today so it can exist? Because in the end, it's not the brain that defines who you are, it's what you choose to do with it. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let's spread this awakening together.